There has been some talk recently about the Zin epidemic. This is not Zin, so I'm gonna refer to it in general as a snus. I'm not going to talk about the health risks like possibly maybe mouth cancer, but maybe not. If you've been addicted to cigarettes or vapes, obviously don't risk it, but I don't think it's very addicting at all otherwise, to be honest. But in the productivity space, some videos paint it as a forbidden apple that will boost your cognitive performance, making it out to be more than it actually is.
Can you imagine how much more Alexander could have conquered if he had access to nicotine?
I've tried it, I've been on and off, I just think it's a pretty cool stimulant. This is going to be more of a guide on using it, and if you even would want to use it, because it's not anything special. But if you're fine with using it, you're confident you won't get addicted, then it's a tool in the toolbox. It's not that different from caffeine, honestly. My personal story with nicotine is that I once bought a spray that you spray under your tongue. It's probably the safest option, least likely for you to get addicted, because it's the most transactional. You just spray it and that's it. It's not a cigarette that you keep sucking on, it's not a vape.
Here's what I really think. Now, this is about guys. I think if guys put something round in their mouth and suck on it, that's a problem.
Even a snus has a little bit of a tactile component to it that makes it slightly more like a habit. Anyway, for the duration that I had it, I hated it. It was stimulating like caffeine, but the ratio of positive stimulation to negative effects, namely nausea, was out of whack. I kept trying it, but it was always just making me sick. So at some point I just threw it away. Because nicotine makes you nauseous when you take too much and it's a short-term thing, I decided to not use it. Like I said before, I like positive things clean. I don't like things that in a sense make you feel worse, but overall you like doing it. I like things that only make me feel better. For example, I don't like alcohol because, first of all, it barely makes me feel good, and at the same time, it makes me feel weak and depressed. So I wanted something that will only give me the good without the bad. I wanted something that will just work in the background. So I replaced nicotine with caffeine, and I realized that it messes with my head. It kind of gives me an almost ADHD, like an ADSD. I'm generally somewhat distractible in some aspects, but with caffeine, it gets out of hand. Nicotine, on the other hand, seems to stimulate more just physically as opposed to mentally. And you may think that you don't care about the physical effects, you only care about the mental, but think about if you were to sit down to study after a hard day of physical labor. Clearly, the physical influences the mental. After some time, however, I learned about nicotine pouches, snuses, which come in different strengths. So I thought maybe if I tried a low strength, then the positive to negative effect ratio would be better. And it turned out to be true. Using too much will pretty much only add the negative effects. My recommendation is seriously to start with just 3 milligrams. If you do decide to go for something stronger, that's fine. You're just going to have to remove it every 5 seconds. Not even joking, I've done that. Nicotine is a little bit different from caffeine in how it stimulates you, but not that different. The primary draw of nicotine over caffeine, however, is that it has a very short half-life, something like 20 minutes. The half-life of caffeine is like 5 hours. So if you have a Monster in the morning with 200 milligrams of caffeine, 15 hours later, when you're winding down to go to sleep, you still have 25 milligrams of caffeine in your system, like a small coffee, which disrupts your sleep. This is important for health and athletic performance. Yes, I'm saying that nicotine is potentially healthier than caffeine, but also as a nootropic. You want to be able to use it as a tool, and in most cases, probably you only need the stimulation for some moments, but in others, it's detrimental. If you find the stimulation to be distracting, you can just remove the snacks, whereas with caffeine, you're not able to do that. And that's important. I've had a video why I don't really like caffeine as a nootropic. I still use it, but it's not that simple. But the main point is that caffeine makes you want to do stuff. But when you're supposed to stop and think about what to do next, your inclination is still to do stuff. So you won't be able to focus. So imagine that you're at work doing a lot of simple, easy tasks, going to meetings, etc. And then at some point you're done with that. Now what? You cannot be in hyperdrive. You need to slow down, think about what to do next, take things easy. So if you're jacked up on caffeine, you're doomed. You'll be bouncing all over the place. Check people's messages, check this document, check that document, and getting nothing really done doing all that. You're almost moving faster than you can think. Whereas if you're using nicotine, you can remove the snaz and slow down, detach, think what to do next. On top of that, if you have constant stimulation from caffeine, you very quickly get accustomed to that stimulation and you want more. Caffeine very much works in the background, but it kind of works too much in the background. You don't really feel it until you take massive doses. It's very implicit in its effect. Whereas with nicotine, you go, okay, I can feel something, it's working, even when taking low doses. It's almost like an extra placebo effect, whereas caffeine almost has like a nocebo effect. And regarding the side effects of nicotine, I've actually come to appreciate how self-limiting it is. Being nauseous is actually the exact opposite of why you take nicotine. You take it to get a boost, get up, be more energetic. And the stimulation from nicotine provides that. But being nauseous is a detriment to that. So sometimes you may keep the snus inside for a little too long, hoping that the stimulation is worth the nausea, but you quickly learn that it absolutely isn't, ever. And it also doesn't mess with your overall personality like caffeine does, since most of the time you're off. So it's just a short boost and you're back to normal when you take it out. So you can easily tell what effect is actually caused by nicotine and what is your baseline. If you're feeling unmotivated, nicotine can help you get up, but the actual running you need to figure out by yourself. So if you're, for example, not engaged in what you're doing, you still need to get engaged yourself. For example, start really paying attention to details, find details about it that you can do better, something you can get excited about. You're not relying on something to keep you up. And I don't know how real this is, but it seems to me like the negative effects of nicotine come in much stronger when you're not using it as a boost, but instead hoping for it to get you moving. For example, if you're sitting in a chair lethargic, nicotine quickly makes you nauseous. But if you're walking, it helps you walk faster and be energetic, and the side effects don't seem to come about as much. You don't get dizzy unless you took way too much. So that's the general outline of it. Now a couple of extra points I want to touch upon. A tip that I can give you is to take the snus out before you get nauseous. If you drew a bell curve of the stimulating effect of nicotine in time and the nauseous effect comes a little later and stays after the stimulation has completely gone away. So when you know you've hit peak stimulation or are about to, cut it out and you won't get a lot of nausea. But when you already get nauseous, it's too late. Remember that when you remove the snus, the nicotine is still in your system for a while, so you'll keep being nauseous for a while. Next up, one simple rule for making sure you're not abusing it is don't become a chain zinger. Don't always keep a snus in your mouth. Go for a little bit with no extra stimulation and be fine with it. It's also a learning experience. Most importantly though, if you have a snus in your mouth that you've kept there for a long time and you feel it's lost its effect, don't reach for a new one. At that point, you're just getting greedy and you're pathologically hoping for more. The one in your mouth probably still has some strength left. you just got used to the higher strength from when it was fresh, but it's still working a little bit. If you replace it with a new one, it's going to be too much and you're going to get nauseous, because nicotine is self-limiting. At that point, you're just trying to chase that high. And it's not even there, you're just trying to get more out of it than it has to offer. So be reasonable, it's a soft substance, use it well, and that means not trying to squeeze more out of it when it cannot offer you more. Don't abuse it, and you'll find it can actually be helpful instead of just a way to get high. I go all in on some stuff, but going beyond the sweet spot for nicotine just doesn't do it justice. It's like going always at max intensity on a bike. You're just not going to get the results you're looking for at the end of the day. Finally, last extra point. I know some people use nicotine for working out. Sticky Ricky supposedly talked about this at one point. I will say, pre-workout, it's a pretty good idea if you're not using caffeine, just to jumpstart the willingness to move, let's call it, remove some lethargy. Never use so much that you get noticeably dizzy. During the workout, no way. Any amount of dizziness is too much. Cardio, sure, good idea, but any lifting is a no-go. The slightest amount of dizziness will make you feel sick, and that will also make you feel more reserved in a sense, and you won't be able to push as hard. And notice that during most exercises, your orientation changes. Squats and deadlifts, you're looking a little down, bench, you're looking up, and so on. And on top of that, your blood pressure changes, which adds up to the dizziness. It's just a bad idea. It also fucks up your breathing. When you get a huge inhale on a hack squat with a nicotine pouch in your mouth, it irritates your throat. And as far as the appetite suppressing effects go, yeah, it works. No doubt about that. Obviously, there is nothing that will take you from hungry to not on a dime, but when used, you will definitely be less hungry throughout the day. Great tool for weight loss if you figure out your lifestyle where you won't be hungry in a maintenance. So those were the major tips. This is definitely something for someone with more life experience, probably at least 22. It's more intricate in how to use it well than caffeine is, and when you're younger, it just doesn't make sense to make it a factor in your life. And I'm saying that as someone who didn't touch caffeine until probably 18 or 19, and even until around 21, I rarely used it. Not because I was super straight edge, though I was a little bit, or I believed it was bad for me, but just because I didn't want to make it a factor, and I honestly didn't care for it. I didn't feel like I needed it, and looking back, I was right. Still, with all that said, you might get tempted to start using it. It's really nothing special, so I want to move over to a section on nootropics in general. I've said it once already that nootropics are not RPG stat increasers. They cause a certain effect, and that effect may in some situations end up contributing to better productivity. A great nootropic is, for example, ibuprofen, if you have chronic pain and you cannot focus. Keep in mind the dangers of using NSAIDs too often, of course. Caffeine is certainly an amazing nootropic if you were not able to get enough sleep. If you did, it depends. Very probably it's not better, it's just different. Caffeine increases arousal, which may be good if you really lack motivation to do anything at all, but for myself, I have plenty of motivation to get lost in my own thoughts. So caffeine doesn't help me get stuff done at work, it just makes me get in my thoughts even more. But if I have a task that's right in front of me, calling for my attention that is also engaging and easy enough to do so that I don't get discouraged. For example, a lot of simple tasks at work that need to get done urgently. The increased hype does actually make me complete those tasks faster. Nootropics are extremely case dependent, and by case I don't mean a certain person, I mean a certain person in a certain situation in a certain environment, doing a certain activity, all that stuff. Very much situational. I've tried a lot of nootropics, alpha-GPC, lion's mane, tyrosine, ashwagandha, magnesium threonate, theanine. None of them I saw any perceptible differences from. And I bought them once and then didn't buy them again when I ran out. Ashwagandha I did buy a couple of times just because I was fooling myself that maybe it does something, even if not perceptibly, but at some point I made the rational decision to not waste my money for quite definitely no effect whatsoever. Of the slightly stronger substances, I once got bupropion and it just worked like caffeine. There's nothing that's going to improve the big general characteristics like intelligence or memory. There's just tools that you can leverage. You want a good tool? Phenibat. It's illegal in some countries, has some potential for abuse if used like an asshole, but for me, this is the gold standard for what a substance should be. It's not for work though, it's for socializing. If you want to use nicotine, think it will be useful, you do you like I do me. If you're unreasonably hyped about nicotine, let me just tell you, life before nicotine and with nicotine is pretty much the same. It's not a lifestyle, it's just a thing that exists. It's just a gadget. It's like, for example, gloves. Yeah, they undeniably keep your hands warm, it's undeniably a positive, but if you don't have them or you lose them, you don't really care. That's about it. See ya.